Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at what is a flaccid designator. Now, flaccid designators are a term in the philosophy of language for terms that pick out different objects in different possible worlds. A term like the most populous country on Earth in 2020 is a flaccid designator because it picks out different countries in different possible worlds. In other words, a different country might have been the most populous country in 2020 in a different possible world, and so that phrase doesn't necessarily pick out the same country in all possible worlds. Flaccid designators are often contrasted with rigid designators, which pick out the same individual in all possible worlds. Proper names are generally considered rigid designators. Things like China, the Earth, and Abraham Lincoln are considered rigid designators because they refer to the same individuals in all possible worlds. There is a possible world where China is not the most populous country on Earth in 2020, but not a world where China is not China or Earth is not Earth. Other examples of flaccid designators include the type of cereal I ate for breakfast, the number of toes Drew Carey has, the smallest star in the Milky Way galaxy. Note that flaccid designators can contain rigid designators, Drew Carey, the Milky Way, etc., but that doesn't make them identical to rigid designators, because the thing that they're actually referring to, a particular star, the number of toes, etc., may be different for that rigidly designated individual in different possible worlds. Saul Kripke, the originator of this distinction, argues that proper names cannot be flaccid designators and must pick out the same object across all possible worlds. So while the Milky Way picks out the same galaxy in all possible worlds that the Milky Way exists, the smallest star in the Milky Way doesn't necessarily, because there may be different sized stars in Milky Way galaxies in other possible worlds. Definite descriptions, like the product of 2 and 3 or the Queen of England, on the other hand, may be either flaccid or rigid, but are most commonly flaccid, because they're generally, when you're describing something like the Queen of England, you're describing something that could be different in different possible worlds. Only in cases where a definite description is referring to logical or mathematical truths, which are true in all possible worlds, are they rigid. For example, the sum of 4 and 5 always refers to 9, regardless of the possible world. Now, one might have a number of concerns with Kripke's strict definitions on rigid and flaccid designators. There are a range of ways we might object to these. One might think that parts of names seem to be definite descriptions, sometimes because a culture names people based on their characteristics, so that if a person did not exhibit those characteristics, it would be inaccurate to call them that name. For example, Al Scarface Capone seems to be a mix of contingent description, Scarface wouldn't be Scarface without the scar, and necessary proper name, Al Capone. Other cultures include honorifics in names, Sir Terry Pratchett, despite the honorifics clearly being dependent on the possible world. Terry Pratchett might not be a knight in all possible worlds. This raises further questions about transworld identity. In other words, what makes something identical to something else in a different possible world? What makes a Barack Obama who lost the 2008 election in one possible world the same person as Barack Obama who won? If I am given a different name in another possible world, does my proper name still refer to that transworld version of me? If everything else is the same, but I was given a different name at birth, it seems that my name should still identify that other individual. But then what is the criteria for a name succeeding to identify an individual? If my DNA is different, how different can my counterpart be and still be my transworld counterpart? And if my counterpart can be sufficiently different to no longer be me, isn't my name just a complicated definite description such that it's explaining what it means to be me. And once my counterpart stops fulfilling that description, my name ceases to refer. So imagine we say that DNA is the thing that is connecting you to your transworld counterpart across the board. If we say that, then my name is actually a definite description because it's just describing my DNA. It's saying that the person that has exactly this DNA structure is going to be identified with this name. And so, in fact, it is a flaccid designator because if an individual that were otherwise identical but had a slight difference in their DNA, my name would fail to refer. And so it seems that even my name is a flaccid designator in some ways. In other words, if the name Mahmoud Sise picks out a particular individual in this world, it must be in virtue of fulfilling any given list of characteristics. It doesn't have to be DNA. You can pick whatever you want to describe why a particular name succeeds at referring into one individual and not another. Maybe being born with certain parents, having certain DNA, living in a particular time and place, etc. There must be some criteria, as the name doesn't refer to all individuals. It refers to one individual in this world and not some other. In virtue of what does that happen? And then that means that an individual which fails to fulfill whatever criteria you just picked for transworld identity is not Mahmoud. And therefore, the designator must be flaccid because it's not just picking out this person, it's picking out some list of criteria that led that name to succeed to refer. There's something that an individual could do or be such that Mahmoud Sise would not refer to them. There is a world, a possible world that is distant enough such that the name would fail to refer. Whatever that thing is what we're talking about in terms of a flaccid designator. It is the definite description. And so this name isn't this fancy, rigid designator, but rather just a definite description in disguise. There's a possible world where that designator fails to refer, and therefore even a proper name can be flaccid. In fact, it seems that there aren't any rigid designators, and all designators might be flaccid. What do you think? Can proper names be flaccid? In virtue of what is someone identical to their counterpart in another possible world? If that essential property could be altered, would their proper name fail to refer, and therefore be in some ways at least a flaccid designator? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications about the videos we put out. Subscribe if you like this content and want to stay up to date. And stay skeptical.